And this is a story from my own personal childhood. And it's really a kind of story of the fears that I had. And one of the things I was scared of, and I wasn't a particularly cautious child, but there was this one slide at a playground that I would go to that I was really scared to do. And it was one of these, they had 2 slides that would go down, and it was quite tall. But I remember going to that slide, and my brother, who was 5 years older, he was a great big brother, he would always try and help me do it. But eventually, after about 6 months, he just gave up on me. He thought, yeah, I'm sorry. I need to go off and play with my friends. I can't help you anymore. And so I was scared, and I would look at the kids coming down the slides, and they were having so much fun. But I was like too cautious, and I was even scared to go up the stairs. And it seemed like it was giant that it reached the clouds. It was probably about the height of that balcony at the back of the sanctuary, which doesn't seem that big, but it seemed really big to me then. And I remember getting halfway up the step and having to climb back down, and there was a line of children behind me, and they were getting frustrated, and I was getting really embarrassed, and it got harder. But I saw them coming down, and these children had a big smile on their face, and I was like, how can you be so happy? It's terrifying. But then there was this young girl who was about 3 years older than me, and I didn't know her. She was in the playground, and she watched me, and she said, are you scared to go up the slide? I said, I'm scared of going up the stairs, and I'm scared. I can't imagine what it would be like coming down. Would it be helpful if I came with you? I said, well, it might help. I said, my brother's tried, but he's my brother. I don't think he tried very hard. He did, actually. But she said, well, come on with me. And she said, maybe I'll come up the steps either side, because there was 2 sets of stairs up to the 2 slides. And she walked up, and I got halfway up. I said, no, I need to go back down. She goes, okay, I'll come back down with you. Would it be helpful if I came up the same stairs with you? I said, well, that might be helpful. So she walked up behind me, just encouraging me up each step of the stairs. And then we got to the top. And she said, are you ready to go? And I'm like, no. And she said, well, I could come down with you if that would help. And I said, okay. And this is a girl I didn't know. And then there was boys next to me who were making fun of me. And she very politely told them to shut up and leave me alone. And so she got in behind me, and she sat behind me, and we went down the slide together. And it was terrifying, but it was also exciting. It was terrifying and exciting. And then so she came up with me the stairs the next time, and she came down again the second time. Then the third time, she let me go by myself, and had a big smile on my face. And I always think of that girl. I never met her again. But she saw this little boy who was scared, this little boy who wanted to do something. She helped me. She discouraged these other kids to tell them to, leave me alone, because I needed to be left alone because I was embarrassed. And then she nurtured me down that. And I always remember that, and I always think of that. That's a nurturing we can do whenever we have fears in our life, and perhaps we can do as a religious community. We can support each other. We can acknowledge each other's fears, but we can find them and nurture them into a path of joy. And I always think of that girl when I think, well, what are the possibilities that we can do? What are the expectations we have for our religious community? So thank you so much for listening. Thank you for those children at home.
One weekend, not too long ago, I went away for a few nights with my daughter. She and I hung out, got our nails done. We watched bad TV, and we created vision boards. We looked through magazines and cut out sayings and pictures that spoke to us. We pasted them onto a foam board. It was a lot of fun, and much bonding ensued. One of the quotes on my board is from the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. It reads, "Peace in ourselves, peace in the world." If the question for this service is to consider a dream we have for the world, a dream that, should it become a reality, would defy our expectations, then this would be my dream, for there to be peace in the world. Sadly, a world at peace, a world without war, A world without senseless killing and hatred seems totally out of reach to me. And so I wonder about Thich Nhat Hanh's quote, "Peace in ourselves, peace in the world." If I were at peace with myself, if you were at peace with yourself, could there be peace in this world? If I consider the Unitarian Universalist seventh principle, which states the respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are all a part, then perhaps the answer is yes. For me, peace in myself comes from holding myself with care and with empathy. It comes from accepting and loving myself just as I am. When I can love myself unconditionally, I can love you as well. And if you feel loved, perhaps you in turn can love yourself. And if we are all connected, then my peace is your peace, and your peace is the world's peace. There it is. Secret to world peace. You're welcome. But finding peace in ourselves is easier said than done. And I do try every day. Here is what I do. Every morning, I sit quietly with my eyes closed for 10 minutes. And during those 10 minutes, I practice compassion for myself and for others. I say these words to myself. May I be safe from inner and outer harm. May I be happy with joy in my heart. May I be healthy and strong in my body. May my life flow with peace and with ease. Then I think about someone I love, and I say these words for them. I think about someone in my life that I don't know, that I just see around, and I say these words for them. And then I think about someone I don't particularly like, someone who's kind of bugging me, and I say these words for that person. And then finally, I say these words for all beings in the world. I invite you to close your eyes and repeat in your mind these words after I say them. May I be safe from inner and outer harm. May I be happy with joy in my heart. May I be healthy and strong in my body. May my life flow with peace and with ease. You may open your eyes. As many of you may know, this is the Buddhist practice of metta, of compassion. And this is my way of finding peace in myself so that there can be peace in the world. And this is the dream that I have for myself and for the world, that if it were to become a reality, it would certainly defy my expectations. But that doesn't mean I can't try. And I do, every day.
So thank you, Larry and Dawn, for blessing us with the music. They're not here with us in the sanctuary. They're doing this remotely, but it's so powerful for them to be able to bring their music with us. And it's even powerful just being able to sit with one another together and listening to that music, even if they're not present. So thank you. And I'd like to add my thanks to Lizzie's, to all the people who made today happening, all the technology. We've got the gang of 5 people, 6 people up in the choir loft doing it. And, they're working very hard, trying to make me look good, and that's not an easy thing to do. So thank you to that. And all the connections team and the worship team, everyone who came together to make this happen, and to each of you for showing up as well, and for you showing up online. So thank you. The theme today is defying expectations and overcoming limitations. And our very presence here speaks to that, I think. And Liz and I had talked about it, and Liz mentioned in our reflection this idea of dreams. That dreams is a way of kind of overcoming limitations and defying expectations. But dreams can be disappointing. Maybe not quite as much as life itself right now, but dreams themselves can be kind of disappointing. There's a wonderful story from Mullah Nasruddin, and I've mentioned him before. He's this 13th century Turkish Sufi thinker, philosopher, writer, and he's a bit of a trickster. He always has these kind of little stories with these humorous ideas. He may have been mythical as much as real, we're never quite sure, but he's considered a real character. He's like this Turkish Sufi wise man. And he valued dreams, and he was dreaming one time. He fell asleep and he was dreaming, and someone knocked on his door, and he opened the door, and the person came in and said, "Look, I'd like to stay with you. I'll give you 10 gold coins if you let me stay with you." And he thought, well, that's a good deal. And so he said, "Yes, you may stay with me." And then the next morning he woke up and he saw the man there, and he said the man was leaving. He gave him 9 gold coins. And Nasruddin goes, "You said 10 gold coins," and immediately woke up. And he realized the man was not there. He'd been dreaming. So he went back to sleep and said, "I'll accept the 9 gold coins." And I think this idea that dreams can disappoint us. They raise these hopes in us, but then the reality, when we wake up, they feel so detached from reality. And I think dreams are fundamental to today's worship topic of how do we defy our expectations and how do we overcome our limitations. Because I think ultimately any great thing that's happened in the world started off as a dream inside someone's head. And then there may have been thousands of people, there may have been one person that made that dream a reality. Because dreams can inspire hope and creativity in us. And reality kind of keeps us grounded, sometimes all too grounded. But dreams are our yearnings for what we want from this world. And they can encourage great creativity in us to overcome any limitations. And the Brazilian writer Paulo Coelho says, "It's a possibility of having a dream comes true that makes life interesting." It's the possibility of having a dream comes true that makes life interesting. And I don't know about you, but I'm finding life plenty interesting right now. I think what we really need to look at when we look at what dreams we want to have and what the obstacles are, what limitations are we putting on ourselves? What unrealistic expectations are we putting on ourselves? And I think there's an uncomfortable truth that we're not recognizing right now. We're thinking, are we going to go into the era of the new normal? And I suspect we're going to go into this era, if we're in this era already, of indefinite uncertainty. We're living in an era of indefinite uncertainty. We weren't even sure up until last week where we're going to become in-person worship. We're not sure what's happening with the schools. We're not sure what's happening with our loved ones. We're not sure what happens if we travel. We are awash in uncertainty. And that's a really hard place to be. It's a chronically stressful situation. We're living with huge amounts of fear and anxiety. And that's understandable, and that can limit our engagement with life and can limit our actions to bring our dreams closer to our reality. And I talked in the Time for All Ages earlier around my fear about going up the slide, about height, going up the steps and going down the slide, and how someone who just coaxed me, who showed me the patience, helped me to get over the limitations I was placing on myself, and to help me get over, see new expectations, see the expectations of joy going down the slide rather than just fear. There's a bit of fear as well, but sometimes that fear can be joyful too. So. And the Unitarian Universalist minister in Auckland, Reverend Teresa Soto, has got a beautiful poem, and I'm just going to take a snippet from it, but she says this, she says, "The antidote of doubt is dreaming. The dreams that seem impossible, listen, that's their nature. If they had already happened, then they would be realities." Dreams do seem impossible until they happen. So can we embrace this idea that dreams can become a reality? Does Liz, with her dream of peace, does she believe that be a reality? She's got all these valid doubts. I think we all have those doubts. We would love to live in a world more peaceful. And it does seem impossible. But can we believe it is a reality? It is a possibility that we could work towards. And I really invite us all to embrace our dreams, those yearnings of our heart for a world that is different than it is. Maybe it's a dream or a yearning for your own personal life to be different than it is. Honor those dreams because they can be possibilities. And look at what unnecessary or unreasonable assumptions or limitations are we putting on ourselves that are thwarting us taking those first steps into a different reality. The Unitarian Universalist minister, Reverend Samuel Trumbo, says this. He says, "Each moment of weakness has so many gifts that offer energy and delight. Even in moments of great danger, the direction of attention is a choice. Great possibilities await us, even if all we can see is the cliff before us. Holding possibility and reality together is the holy, hope-filled work of humanity. If we choose it again and again in love, holding possibility and reality together is the holy, hope-filled work of humanity." That is a vision, a mission, a charge to each of us and to this religious community. Holding possibility and reality together is our holy, hope-filled work. And I invite you to think, what are your hopes and dreams for this religious community at this time? What do you think the purpose of religious community is? I'd like to share a story with you. The Zenith Drilling Company, for a time, was the top drilling company in the world and created great wealth for those who worked there. They did drill bits, which were used extensively for drilling holes, particularly in the oil industry. But then competition came in and they were struggling. They started to, their profit margins reduced. They started making losses, and a new CEO came in. The old CEO got fired, and the new CEO came in, and he called some of his top leaders together and said, "What do you think the purpose of Zenith Drilling Company is?" And they all debated. It took about a day to come up with an answer, and they said, "Our vision for our company is we want to make the best drill bits in the world." And the CEO said, "No, that's not your purpose. That's what you do. Your purpose is to drill the best holes in the world, not the best drill bits." I think that's really telling. It's like, what is our largest purpose? Not what do we do, but what's our largest purpose? What's the why of what we do? I think that when we start looking at that, then we'll understand what our purpose is as a religious community. We can often think we want a great worship service, we want fabulous music, we want to have the most efficient board meetings, we want a great, understandable financial budget. That's what we do. Why do we do it? We do it because I think each of us are trying to fulfill our vision and mission for ourselves of what this is. There's a larger purpose behind all of that. And I think what those things do is actually they help us to deal with the struggles and hardship and pain and suffering that we deal with in our everyday life, and help inspire us to bring more love, to make more caring, to bring more compassion, to make more goodness into the world. That's why we do what we do in religious community, so that we can bring more love into the world. And I invite you to look at a vision statement, and it's a community of spiritual growth, compassion, and justice. We're a community of spiritual growth, compassion, and justice. So let's break that down. We're a community. So it's not me, and it's not you, it's us together. We come together as a religious community. Spiritual growth, each of us has a desire for how we want to grow spiritually, and how do we want to heal emotionally. I think we are all carrying some pain, some struggles from our life, and we come to religious community, sometimes consciously, perhaps unconsciously, to find some healing, be it through loneliness, be it through grief, be it through the trauma of witnessing the suffering in the world. And then we're a community of compassion, because the primacy of a religious community is we care for one another spiritually, emotionally, and physically, and we care for ourselves in those ways. And we're a community of justice because we want to transform our world to make it more sustainable, to make it less divisive, to make it more caring, and what Liz talked about, making it less violent. I think that's why we come religious community, to nurture us and inspiring us to address each of those things. And as a religious community, we come together to determine what values do we share. We're a community of shared values and differing beliefs. What are those shared values that inspire us to move forward, to transform our world through acts of love? And I love Liz committing ourselves to peace and setting those expectations for ourselves. However far in the future we can help setting an intention to take those small steps in that path. And expectations are a funny thing. You sometimes defy expectations by setting them intentionally. And there was a psychologist, Bob Rosenthal, and he did this experiment. He's kind of mischievous. One night he was a psychologist who was doing all these experiments with rats, having them run through mazes. So he went in, and one night he put these labels on all the hundreds of rats he had, and some had a green thing saying, "These rats are really smart." And he put red labels on the other saying, "These rats are not smart." And he just did it randomly. He had no idea. He just did it randomly. And then he told his experimenters to go and run tests, and they were trying to encourage the rats to get through the maze as quickly as possible. Within 2 weeks, the rats that were labeled smart would get through the maze twice as fast as those that were labeled not so smart, even though they were all effectively the same. It was done completely randomly. So why did that happen? Was he lucky? Was it a statistical anomaly? No, it wasn't. He set these expectations, so the researchers who were working on it, he observed they were more nurturing towards the rats that were smart. They maybe gave them extra food. There was more encouragement. Just by setting those expectations, they fulfilled those expectations. And that has been repeated at Stanford University around teachers who have expectations for children. The children rise to meet those expectations. So what expectations do we want to set for ourselves as a community? Not guaranteeing, and I'm not for a moment saying you're all a bunch of rats. Please don't make that assumption. But what are the expectations that we want to set for ourselves? Because expectations can set an intention, and unconsciously and consciously we can move towards that. Because and we've got to be cautious about expectations, because there can be unrealistic expectations that just lead to this perfectionism and just end up plummeting our self-esteem. But expectations can challenge us to open up new possibilities. So really be discerning about what expectations you want to set for yourself and what expectations you would like to see for this religious community. Because there's no greater power than our community recognizing its potential and taking the steps to move towards it. In the chalice lighting that we read earlier, Reverend Scott Taylor says, the future is not simply a place we are going, but a place we are creating. The future is not just a place we are going, it's a place we are creating. And I think we are co-creators and collaborators in creating this community and taking action in the world around us. And there's a story from Scotland I'd like to share with you around this. And it's a story of a farmer. He's looking over his field, and he's had a hard day at work, and the field's looking really nice, and it's a beautiful sunset, and he's looking with pride at what he's created. And the minister from the local church comes along, and he's looking at it and nods approvingly and says, yeah, you and God have done a beautiful job with this field. And the farmer said, well, thank you, Pastor. He said, you should have seen the mess it was when God was working on it by himself. And I think that really points to that we are co-creators here. We can't wait on anyone else. We are co-creators of the world we are. We are the collaborators that we bring forth, the dream, the possibility, the reality that we wish to see. And the great African-American artist, activist, and writer, Adrienne Marie Brown says this, says, meaningful collaborations both relies on and deepens relationship. The stronger the bond between people or groups in collaboration, the more possibility you can hold. In the beginning this work, notice who you feel drawn to and where you find ease. And notice who challenges you, who makes the edges of your ideas grow or fortify. I find that my best work has happened during my most challenging collaborations, because there are actual differences that are converging and creating more space, ways forward that serve more than one worldview. Those are the words of Adrienne Marie Brown. And I love that idea, because we often think collaboration is where we work with people who maybe got similar ideas or we like, and we blend. But sometimes the best collaboration will happen when we challenge each other. And that's one of the beauties when we have a diverse number of opinions. There's challenging, and you converge towards an answer that no one of you could come up with by yourself. That's the power of collaboration. That's the power of co-creation. And it may be co-creation with people in this congregation. It may be partnerships we have with communities outside of here. It may be a co-creation with your understanding of the divine, the sacred. Ultimately, what it takes to make a dream a reality is to commit to it. What dream are you willing to commit to? What vision of this religious community are you willing to commit to? Because our future is the space for growth. And I invite each of us to consciously choose to move to the edges of our knowledge, to the edges of our comfort, to the edges of our very potential. Let's defy the expectations set for our community. Let us transcend our limitations and unleash our potential together. To finish, I'd like to read a poem by one of my favourite poets, John O'Donoghue, the late Irish Celtic spirituality leader. In out of the way places of the heart where your thoughts never think to wander, this beginning has been quietly forming, waiting until you were ready to emerge. For a long time it has watched you desire, feeling the emptiness grow inside of you, noticing how you willed yourself on, still unable to leave that which you had not outgrown. It watched you play with the seduction of safety, and the grey promises that sameness whispered, heard the waves of turmoil rise and relent, wondered, would you always like to live like this? Then the delight when your courage kindled and out you stepped onto new ground, your eyes young again with energy and dream, a path of plenitude opening before you. Though your destination is not clear, you can trust the promise of this opening and unfurrow yourself into the grace of beginning. This is one with your life's desires. Awaken your spirit to adventure. Hold nothing back. Learn to find ease and risk. Soon you will be home in a new rhythm, for your soul senses the world that awaits you. Those are the words of John O'Donoghue. My wish and blessing for each of us here is may we find delight when our courage is kindled as we step out into new ground. And may our eyes be young again with energy and dream of the abundance opening before us.